What is up, DW Nation? So with another installment of Raw this past week, we find out what was Drew McIntyre's response to the attack that happened to him last week on the behalf of T-Bar and Mace, and also are T-Bar and Mace in cahoots with MVP. Also, we see what Charlotte Flair's stake is going to be in the Raw Women's Division. So, with that and so much more happening on this past week's Monday Night Raw, I'm Kevin Jones, the Disciples of Wrestling, and let's get down to it. We waste no time as we start off Monday Night Raw when Drew McIntyre comes out and he talks about, of course, knocking out the two top contenders of the Monday Night Raw roster with Randy Orton and Braun Strowman last week to secure another match for the WWE Championship against Bobby Lashley. He also talks about the people that attacked him last week with T-Bar and Mace. And of course, he talks about the affiliation or possible affiliation with MVP and T-Bar and Mace. And as soon as he gets finished talking about this, out comes the man himself, MVP. And MVP flat out says, yes, you won the number one contenders match last week, but you're literally just setting yourself up for the exact same thing to happen that happened at Mania to happen again at Backlash. And of course, he talks about T-Bar and Mace and says there's no affiliation. Of course, if y'all didn't remember, Bobby Lashley downsized the Hurt Business a few weeks back. So he says, why would we even think about bringing people in right now? So with that, of course, Drew McIntyre doesn't believe it. He comes out of the ring and goes, so it was just a coincidence that these two came and attacked me last week and you were at the top of the stage as the show went off. And of course, he comes down and says, maybe we have unfinished business. And as he comes to approach MVP face to face, T-Bar and Mace come back and they attack him once again, bringing him into the ring and hitting the double choke slam to leave a big smile on MVP's face as they walk off and leaving Drew McIntyre in the ring. Now, after this, we actually see Drew McIntyre approach Adam Pearce backstage, and he says, give me the match I want. Give me T-Bar and Mace against me later on. And Adam Pearce says, I can't do it. I need you to find a tag team partner. And Drew McIntyre says, it doesn't matter. I want these two with a tag team partner or not. So our first match is a tag team match, and it is the Viking Raiders against Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin. And I'm not going to lie, starting off, this was all Cedric and Shelton. They grounded the Viking Raiders extremely well. We actually saw a repeated sequence where we actually saw the Viking Raiders try to tag in each other to possibly build up momentum, but it was to nothing. They couldn't do a thing until we actually saw when Cedric Alexander got a near fall on Eric, where Ivar ends up coming in to break up the pin. And we actually see Ivar go out and take out Shelton Benjamin on the outside, to where we actually see the judo throw into the knee strike by Eric onto Cedric Alexander, tagging in Ivar to set up for the Viking Express for the win. Next up, we get an interview with Randy Orton, where he talks about we're not going to see The Fiend as long as Randy is still around. The Fiend is gone. And he even says, well, even though Drew McIntyre got lucky last week, that means I now have to wait until after Backlash to see who's the winner. But just know, whoever wins that match has a target on their back from Randy Orton. And of course, this brings up an interruption from a surprising Matt Riddle, where Matt Riddle has his scooter and is going around the interviewer and Randy Orton. And he says, hey, bro, congratulations at your match at Mania. You beat The Fiend. No one thought you could do it. You're the Apex Predator. You're the Viper. You're the Legend Killer. But I lost my U.S. title, and I was thinking, since we both don't have titles, how about we make the tag team RK Bro? And as he says that, then we actually see Randy Orton walk off. Because a horrible idea, Riddle. And of course, as Randy Orton is livid because this kid decided to just interrupt Randy Orton's interview. He goes to Adam Pearce and he starts to describe Riddle because he don't even know who Riddle is. And he says, I want that guy in the ring with me tonight so I can beat him. So we got ourselves an official match. It is Randy Orton versus Matt Riddle later on tonight. Now we go back in the ring where we see Charlotte Flair, and she comes out to deliver a promo. She comes out and says, I don't understand why people are getting so upset with me, because all I did was demand respect last week and allow myself to be my true self. While everyone else in the females' locker room is being fake, acting like they like each other when they hate each other just as much as they hate me. She says she's confused while they're still talking about Asuka versus Rhea Ripley. She says she already beat Rhea, and she already beat Asuka, both at WrestleMania, even though at separate times, even ending the streak of Asuka at Mania. And she says, I respect Asuka, but that doesn't mean I like Asuka at all, and I will show her that as I dominate her and beat her tonight. And of course, that brings out Asuka as Asuka goes into the ring to go face-to-face with Charlotte. But also out comes the Raw Women's Champion, Miss Rhea Ripley, as she's on the stage. And Charlotte goes, I don't even know why you're out here, but how about this? I'll invite you to see my match later on, and you can take notes and see what it's really like to beat someone up. And then, of course, this brings Asuka to try to talk, and then Charlotte just immediately shuts her up repeatedly, and even rubs it in Asuka's face that she ended her streak at WrestleMania a few years back. And as she's continuously shutting up Asuka, Asuka yells over her and goes, you're gonna lose. And she says the B word too, but I ain't gonna say that, you know. Now it's time for our second match of the night, and we got Matt Riddle versus Randy Orton. Now, as Randy Orton's coming out and going right to where he needs to make his entrance at in Gorilla, we actually see Matt Riddle zoom right past him onto the scooter, just making Randy Orton more frustrated than he already is about the kid. So we go right into the action, though, where we actually see Matt Riddle try to lock in. Actually, he does lock in the sleeper hold on 3 different times, and all 3 times we actually see Randy Orton break up this submission hold. Now, while Matt Riddle looks to get onto the apron, Randy Orton just sweeps his feet right off the apron, and then, of course, hits a belly-to-back suplex onto the commentary table as we go into break. Now, Randy Orton's in firm control. Matt Riddle tries to get in some offense, but we actually see Randy Orton hit a nice rebound power slam, a beautiful rebound power slam, where we actually see Matt Riddle then end up building up a little bit of momentum as he ends up hitting a nice combination of strikes, going into the Pele kick and hitting a nice forearm strike into the corner. But Randy Orton takes control back once again as he hits a nice superplex from off the top rope. Now, as Randy is in control, we actually see Riddle go for a nice little reversal as he locks in the triangle choke, draping off of the top rope. Randy Orton eventually breaks out of it, and as Riddle looks to get back into the ring, Randy kicks him right in the chest and hits a nice draping DDT to set up what he believes will be the RKO. But as he goes for the RKO, we actually see Riddle get a nice crucifix pinfall for the win. A very surprising win, but I'm happy for my boy Matt Riddle. Our next matchup is the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax versus Lana and Naomi. Now, starting off, it's Nia Jax, and she is getting chopped down by Naomi and Lana until she hits a nice double suplex to free herself up to tag in Miss Shayna Baszler. Now, Shayna Baszler has control all up until Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose come out, and they show footage from last week as they embarrass Nia Jax on multiple occasions. Now, Nia Jax doesn't like this and comes off the apron to go after those two up on the stage. And as this happens, of course, Lana and Naomi take full advantage as they hit the double face buster to pin Shayna Baszler for the win. Next up, we has Miz TV. And this is with The Miz and Maurice as they celebrate the season premiere of Miz and Mrs. from last week. And as these two come out, of course, as they're celebrating their TV show, we're also seeing Miz celebrate the fact that he's the reason for Bad Bunny's success, and also celebrating the win that he had against Damian Priest last week. Now, of course, as these two are celebrating and drinking up the champagne, we see Mr. Damian Priest come out. And he comes out and he calls The Miz delusional for all of his claims and accusations, saying he's just as delusional as Jake Paul, thinking that he's a real boxer. What a burn. And then we actually see Damian Priest starts speaking Spanish, and then we see Maurice start speaking French. I guess they weren't expecting Priest to understand what Maurice was saying, but he understood her fully as as she told Priest that, of course, The Miz is better than him, and she actually gave Priest a match against Miz for later on in the night. And Miz had no idea. Miz had no idea at all. Now, of course, Damian Priest, he got what he wanted, so he's about to celebrate with a glass of champagne. But Miz and Maurice both take their glasses and throw the champagne right into Priest's face, and they both get out of the ring and retreat and await for their match later on tonight. Now, our next match is Kofi Kingston of the New Day versus Elias. Now, of course, Elias comes out. He's about to perform, and he's, of course, interrupted by Xavier Woods, who's on the top of the stage playing the bass. And, of course, Elias does not like it when people steal his thunder, especially right before a performance. So he's visually upset, and as we start the match, we can tell as he takes control of Kofi Kingston right off the bat. All up until we actually see another distraction from Xavier Woods playing the bass once again on the outside. And Kofi gets in a little bit of offense, but quickly Elias takes control once again. But Kofi ends up taking some nice amount of offense in as he hits a nice diving crossbody off the top rope. And then we actually see him hit the SOS. Now he sets up Elias on the top rope to hit a diving Hurricane Rana, but Elias dodges and hits a nice diving knee off the top rope for the win. Yes, Elias just pinned Kofi Kingston. Now, next up, we get ourselves a Alexa's Playhouse segment, and she's talking about the history and the backstory of her and Lily, the little doll she had, the creepy one from last week. Now, as they're explaining this, we actually see at the end Alexa give a warning shot to the Raw Women's Division. And she says, you saw Lily did not like The Fiend. So just to let y'all know, she don't like none of y'all either. So I'm very interested to see where this is going. This is our first time really seeing Alexa pursue the women's division in a long time. So I'm very interested to see how this comes out, especially with the Nightmare being the Raw Women's Champion. Now, backstage, we actually get ourselves an interview with Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose, but this quickly comes to an end as Nia Jax runs them off. Now, Nia Jax is telling them, you better run, but Shayna Baszler quickly comes over and tells her, hey, you can't keep getting distracted. I need you to get your head in the game because it's costing us matches. And if you don't get in your head in the game, you'll get something else. And she says, what does that mean? And of course, as Baszler's walking off, we get ourselves Mr. Angel Garza. And he flat out asks Nia, what do you see in Reggie? And walks off, leaving Nia confused. Because I was confused after all this. So I'm very interested to see where this goes. Hopefully Nia gets back into it, gets her head back into the game, because I do not want to see another tag team get split up again. So our next match is the handicap match of Drew McIntyre versus T-Bar and Mace. And starting off early, it ain't looking too good for Drew. Drew got nothing in. He was double teamed. He was grounded very quickly and very easily by T-Bar and Mace. They have firm control for a lot of this, even having the Eye of MVP on the back as he watched on the screen. And of course, we end up seeing Drew McIntyre getting in a nice amount of offense. He hits the Glasgow Kiss. He hits a nice spine buster. And as he's looking to hit the Claymore, we actually see Mace get onto the apron to disrupt Mr. Drew McIntyre. They team up on him, and this causes a disqualification. And this brings out the monster among men as he looks to give Drew McIntyre some backup, and he takes them out, and we get ourselves a tag team match. Now, this tag team match starts off and easily is in control is Braun Strowman and Drew McIntyre. They're taking out Mace and T-Bar quite easily. All up until we actually see Mace distract Braun Strowman from the outside of the ring so T-Bar can get a nice chop block in on the Monster Among Men to take control. Now, this leads into a hot tag going in from Braun to Drew McIntyre, and Drew McIntyre is building momentum quite easily and even takes the mask off of Mace and beats him with it, causing another disqualification. Yeah, that happened. So as he's beating him up, we actually see Braun Strowman. We actually see T-Bar come in first to give some help to his buddy Mace. And then we actually see Braun Strowman come in, and then he takes the mask off of T-Bar. And we actually see these two end up rolling out of the ring again, and they end up retreating with all smiles on their faces because they just won the match off disqualification. I get what they were aiming for. They wanted to unmask these guys to find out. I mean, they're still called T-Bar and Mace. Hopefully, we end up getting these guys called Theo Madden and Dominic Dijakovic, their rightful names. But this was unnecessarily what went into it. We did not need a double disqualification in order to get to this climax. We could have easily got T-Bar and Mace still winning with them being unmasked. It doesn't hurt anyone involved, I promise. But this is what happened on Raw last night, and I'm not a fan, but I do see what they were trying to do. Our next match is Damian Priest versus The Miz. And starting off, The Miz retreats quite early. He actually retreats to go give Maurice a kiss right outside the ring. But of course, Damian Priest grabs your boy and launches him right into the ring. And Damian Priest has control very early, just overwhelming The Miz, all up until Maurice gets involved, holding Damian Priest's leg as he looks like he's about to hit the lights, possibly. But then we see The Miz end up taking control, knocking Damian Priest outside the ring, getting in a little bit of offense outside, and then bringing him back in. Now he looks to hit his very famous it kicks, and as he's doing this, he's actually just firing up Damian Priest. So Damian Priest gets fired up, gets up, and hits his own kicks of his own. And then we see him end up Irish whipping Miz into the corner, hits a nice corner splash, hits the broken arrow, and then ultimately sets up The Miz for Hit the Lights for the win. So, if you guys are keeping score, this is one Miz and one Damian Priest. Now, of course, we go into commercial break because you got to do that. That's what the advertisers get paid for. But we come back, and it is Sheamus as he delivers a promo. And he says, hey, I'm going to bring prestige to this U.S. Championship. I'm going to bring it back strong as I look to have myself an open challenge every single week to prove I'm the best. And he goes, you know, who wants to step up? And out comes Humberto Carrillo. Poor Humberto. Humberto thinks that this is about to set up a match. Well, this is what actually happened. Humberto comes in, and he gets destroyed almost immediately by Sheamus. Sheamus throws him outside the ring, and then he beats him up outside the ring. Then he throws him inside the ring, beats him up inside the ring, sets him up for a brogue kick, knocks his head off his shoulders, yells at him for a little bit, and leaves him laying. Yeah, I mean, it was that simple. That's how that went. Now it's time for our main event, and it is Charlotte Flair versus Asuka. And of course, after these females make their entrance, out comes the Raw Women's Champion, the Nightmare, Miss Rhea Ripley, and she grabs herself a little chair as she sits outside of the ring, ringside, to watch all the action. Now, starting off, this is very fast. This is a very fast start off, showing that these two know each other super well. And this ends up leading into a double neck breaker onto the apron, leaving these two both flat out on the outside of the ring. Now, when we come back, Asuka's gaining control with a drop kick off the second rope, and then we actually see her hit a nice hip attack going in. Now, we actually see Charlotte try to actually build momentum, but every single time Charlotte tries to build momentum, we see Asuka hitting another reversal. This ended up leading into a nice reversal, a nice code breaker reversal, to where it was left these two females both laying on the mat, and as these two both end up coming up to strike each other, we end up seeing as Asuka goes to build momentum as she bounces off the ropes, we actually see Charlotte hit a nice spear. Now, of course, this sets up Asuka to end up being hit with a draping knee bar on the outside, and then of course still somehow we end up seeing Asuka still reverse Charlotte in the ring to hitting the Asuka lock. Now, of course, Charlotte gets out of this. And then we see Charlotte end up hitting a chop block on Asuka to where she ends up hitting the figure 8. And as she has that submission locked in, we actually see Miss Rhea Ripley get up from her chair and sweep the arms of Charlotte. Of course, going back to how Charlotte ended up costing them their match last week when she got involved, Rhea just wanted to get her little get back in. Of course, Charlotte goes after Rhea, but we actually see Miss Asuka take advantage of that as she hits a nice crucifix pin for the win. And Charlotte, she ain't happy. She is not happy at all and takes out all her frustrations on the referee, just beating him up. Honestly, this was messed up. I just didn't know what to do or say about this, really. And she beats him up so bad, more officials come out. And as more officials come out, she's like, I'm done. I'm done. She goes to walk off, and then she hits a huge punt right into the referee's midsection. And we find out later on that Charlotte's actually fined $100,000 by the WWE for deliberately beating up an official. Now, in this episode, there were a lot of moving parts. Some I didn't agree with, some that were fairly well, and definitely a few surprises. Overall, I thought this was a solid show. I could have done without certain things. I don't think the double disqualification was a good thing. I also don't think that we should really get many distractions or crucifix pins. I get it. Matt Riddle is just lost his belt to Sheamus, but I think Matt Riddle should have the stature to go up against Randy Orton to the point where Randy Orton at least knows him. I mean, Matt Riddle's been on the main roster for almost a year now, and he was your U.S. champion, so you would think Randy Orton would know a little bit about him. But I mean, you can't have a perfect situation. I'm glad that Alexa Bliss is going back into the Raw Women's division to make some noise once again and line up these challengers for Miss Rhea Ripley. And I'm very curious to see what this goes into, this closing angle, and how it plays into effect, especially going into Backlash. Hopefully a triple threat match. But without further ado, of course, I'm Kevin Jones, and I'll be back with you guys again on Thursday when I do myself the AEW recap. But until then, on Wednesday, tomorrow, you'll actually see Jordan as he does his NXT recap. But until next time, that was wrestling.